The documentary course at PACE is really this collective effort of students.
It's not a class so much as like a project.
It's like the real world, essentially, inside of a college classroom.
The doc class is what made me come to PACE. It was the wall of awards that I saw.
Before spring break, we're in pre-production.
We research it, we reach out to people for interviews.
During spring break, we travel abroad and film it. After spring break, we're in post-production.
To turn out a documentary in as quick a manner as possible.
So it's been in Cuba, Florida, Puerto Rico, Hawaii. So it's like a study abroad course.
So originally the plan for this semester was to cover bees on the rooftops in France.
During the Notre Dame fire, the bees on the roof of Notre Dame had survived.
And it was supposed to be about the importance of beekeeping and beekeepers themselves.
The first couple of weeks of class was a lot of research. We were learning everything we could about bees. We had presenters coming in.
We got all the list of people that we wanted to interview. We sent out those emails to people we want to interview, and this was all people in France.
We researched how we would get around, where we were going to be. I remember there was a team talking about walking to the top of the Eiffel Tower, and the class was split. Half of us were like, that sounds miserable, we're not going to do that, and the other half was like, that sounds great.
So, as we were getting further along, about a month into pre-production, the flights were booked. We were ready to go. We even had our locations team ready, where are we going to eat dinner? And we had all that kind of stuff figured out in advance.
But COVID hit around the same exact time as we were supposed to be leaving. And we were keeping an eye on COVID over in Europe because it didn't quite hit the US yet.
To me, I was like, we're fine. We're gonna be okay. It's not really gonna get bad here. We're gonna go to France and it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be crazy. We're gonna be like, wow, we did this during COVID.
You wanted to mentally prepare to be in France and to be away, and I gotta go get my money exchanged, and I gotta pack, all my chargers, and so you were mentally prepared to leave, but it was this unsure of, are we gonna shut down? Is PACE gonna even stay open? What's gonna happen to the dock?
We didn't really know what COVID was or anything, so we were all just like, I'm still down to go. We didn't think that it was gonna become a huge problem or anything, but now it's a global pandemic.
And it was like this back and forth of, we're gonna go. Actually, no, the next day we're not gonna go.
It was really anxious. You didn't know what was gonna happen. You didn't know whether or not we were gonna get shut down. And so the week before we were supposed to go, we come into class and Dr. Leske basically gives us the news that, we're not gonna be able to go. They're shutting down Europe.
I didn't even know if we were going to film a documentary at all. I thought that was it, and here's this big thing that I wanted to do since my junior year of high school, and it's done, it's dead.
I'm a skater, and I quit skating to do this documentary.
I cried in my bed, and I was very let down. This was definitely a big project. This was gonna be my first big production.
And the day before we were sent home for spring break, aka the rest of the semester, everybody was talking about COVID.
My initial response to any sort of bad news is, okay, how can we fix it? And where can we go from there? And so my mind immediately went to, what's the plan B?
Luckily, Professor Liu and Dr. Leske had this backup plan, which we called our Plan B, and we decided to immediately shift the focus to a local tri-state area-based production.
It was kind of nice that we did bees because we weren't going to a specific place to cover a specific thing like Hawaii and the volcano.
So all the pre-production and finding people and getting interviews ready that we had taken 2 months to do, we were now doing in the span of a week and hoping that we were gonna be able to get anything at all.
We pivoted mostly by taking the contacts that we had made in the US. In the beginning, these people weren't going to be used in any interviews. They were more so contacts that, we could use for research. And so once the documentary had been temporarily shut down and we had to pivot, it really became important to come back to those people and say, hey, would you like to be in this documentary?
It was the most controlled chaos it could be, a little more chaotic than we would all hope. Planning, reaching out to beekeepers a week before the interview seemed a little bit not professional, but that's the way it had to be.
And it kind of just became its own little like hive. Like it's like we're networking and going through a lot of different avenues to try and find people that are going to help bring this collective idea together.
Anything honey related, we were on the phone, you know, can we interview you? Do you know anybody else we can interview? Do you have any advice for us? And we just got right to work on Plan B.
Because we also had fully anticipated coming back to campus after spring break.
And it was a little more challenging because everyone else was coming from different locations. So the way it was set up, there was a New England group, there was a New Jersey group, a New York group.
That transition was difficult, but we still filmed.
It was hard to get people that felt comfortable enough to come, invite people into their space, into their bee yards.
That first interview, you know, everybody was kind of nervous. We just wanted to make sure we nailed it. And I think it went very well.
We, at that point, weren't wearing masks because we didn't have to, I guess. Like, it wasn't like a guideline. It felt very normal. Like, we went out, did interviews, shot B-roll, like everything was pretty normal. So me and Brian McDermott went to his parents' boss's farm. They had bees there and we needed a reflector for some reason, but we didn't have one. So he went and got like a screen and tinfoil, and he was like, we're out here in the field working with what we have, and he was making a reflector out of tinfoil and like a wooden frame, and that was just a fun memory.
Okay, so we're out in the field. Oh no, this is parchment paper.
Winter break leading up to spring semester 2020, I learned how to crochet and I made bees. I made a bee like this big. I made little ones that I would give out to the students. When we had to switch to Plan B, I made Dr. Luske a massive bee that was like the size of a small cat.
Go Luske!
Oh my God. That is one big bee. How's it going?
This is great. Having a lot of fun.
How about you, Corey?
We're doing well. My hands are cold.
One story I remember specifically is we were sitting in a diner, and I was sitting there with Dr. Luske, and she turned to me and she said, this is the last time that we're going to be able to do this. And you know, we were all sitting together in a restaurant, and surely enough, you know, a few days later, everything shut down, all the restaurants closed, and that definitely made production a lot harder for us. So we immediately went on pause. You know, we weren't shooting any more interviews, the mask mandates came out, everybody was afraid. It was that initial stage of COVID where everything was just crazy.
The semester is ending, but be aware we're still going strong.
And Dr. Luske said, you know, you can either be a part of this or you cannot. And it was totally fine if you didn't want to be, because, you know, it's really tough to try and make the time. And so it was really important, especially for me, to see this project through. Going into the summer, we knew that we were going to be conducting more interviews because people, you know, we had sort of settled into the idea of COVID-19.
We thought we were going to go into a 2-week quarantine and come out of it and everything was going to be gone.
But eventually back in, I would say in about July, we were able to get back out and start shooting again.
Once the masks were in place and it was like a far more manageable thing.
We were meeting once, twice a week to edit and, you know, coordinating every single day on, you know, who's going to go to that shoot on this date and who can come to this one. Okay, I can't come to that. I have the equipment. I can bring that to you on this day, or can you bring that hard drive to me on this other day? And so it really became just as much about communication and about sort of grouping together as we could, because, you know, when you're making a documentary or any film for that matter, it's all about the team.
Because the people who were there over the summer were the people who still wanted to be there over the summer.
When it was just Emily and I out on shoots, you know, you're thinking, okay, we're not at school anymore, we're not in a controlled environment, we're out and we're doing it, this is real world stuff here.
So a lot of the shoots that we conducted in upstate New York were originally supposed to just be one interview for that day, and they would often blossom into a lot of other interviews. And so it was kind of just looking at the crew and being like, hey, do you want to go do this? Like, I'm not doing anything. Oh, I'm not doing anything either. It's COVID, who's doing anything? And so it was just sort of becoming gung-ho and being like, sure, we're gonna go drive to this random person's house or, you know, this random farm.
It was perfect bee time, so we had an opportunity to see a lot of hives, see a lot of bees.
Conducting interviews in a pandemic is definitely pretty strange. You know, you show up in the mask and we have all our equipment sanitized and ready to go. So your lav mics, you know, the cameras, basically any touch points we would sanitize, wipe them down in between shoots.
When we wanted to mic people up, they had to do it. We gave them the mic, we explained like how they were gonna do it, and if we needed them to move it over, we asked them to move it over. I still think that we got like a full range or full experience of what we would have been shown if we weren't in a pandemic, because people were thankfully very comfortable allowing us into their space, and we were still able to get that footage and get those interviews and make the documentary, which I appreciate a lot.
So after filming all the interviews for the documentary, we switched to completely online post-production.
We're used to working in person, especially throughout the editing process, so even things as simple as media management were difficult.
File hosting and file sharing, we used SharePoint to put everything online.
Which was new this year. We were the test run of SharePoint.
But we ran into problems pretty quickly because a lot of it was filmed in a high resolution codec, which wasn't supported. So you'd click on it and it'd play 3 seconds and then you get an error. And you couldn't see what the footage was. So then you'd have to download the footage to see what the footage was.
We had like separate group editing sessions for each state.
We would try to meet at least once a week to go over footage, and the groups all had separate timelines for the project. So during editing, New Jersey would work on their timeline, New England would work on their timeline, New York would do theirs. There was one person doing the edit on Premiere, and then everyone else was on Discord watching, saying what they thought.
Through a lot of post-production, that's how we managed it. We did a lot of virtual editing, streaming, and there are a lot of hiccups that come along with that, but we sort of pushed through it.
Our food supply would be drastically impacted.
Okay. Very good. I hope that Jersey and New York are seeing how your pieces are going to all fit together, because I did.
I think that this project would not have been able to have been achieved if we did not have Discord, which sounds very weird to say.
I hear you. And I know that Jersey has a lot of B-roll, so this is going to be once we get back together, this is going to be a real sharing process. But the good news is that, we're seeing it now and we have the footage.
Discord editing can be a little bit awkward because you can like put a piece of input in there and then people don't answer for a couple seconds and it's like, oh, they hated that suggestion and they're too afraid to tell me.
It could be frustrating. It could be frustrating seeing something in your mind and trying to say it into a phone over just doing it in person.
And then you'd also have to worry about, latency issues because we're all screen sharing. So sometimes, what I'm seeing is not necessarily what the other people are seeing because of the delays and the differing frame rates and the problems with university Wi-Fi, or if you're off campus, their own Wi-Fi. And it's kind of hard to figure out what's a problem of the internet and what's an actual problem in the editing process.
I don't know if everyone felt this way, but for me, it took all the fun out of post-production.
It was a lot. It was hard to find times when everyone was free. It was hard to find the motivation to even show up.
Keeping everybody motivated was difficult, but I think we just kept up. We kept in contact with each other. We sent memes in our Slack chat. We always kept in touch. Everybody was following up. You were in constant communication with the other groups, and it definitely kept us connected.
It ended up being okay for what we were trying to do because we could all look at the screen, we could all communicate, we could all get our ideas together, which was really nice, so that it wasn't just one person editing and then being like, here, I made this. It could be a group effort, again, despite not being with each other.
So I made a graphic for when Frank Mortimer talks about how many miles a bee flies in its lifetime, and I got to make the little bee flying from one flower to another flower, and then he says something like, it is 2 times around the equator, and so I made a little bee fly 2 times around the equator, and it was nice.
I wrote and recorded all the music for this documentary.
I worked on the opening for the whole summer, didn't like how it came out, so I deleted all of it, started working on it again. I did it in the lab. I had Alice and Philip sitting on one side, I had Corey on the other side, Kaylin was there, I'm sure Lou was there.
I thought it was stressful but it became more so about doing the best that you can in this situation. I mean, in general, it's not an ideal scenario to be in, but you know, when you have people that you really respect and that you like being with, what is there to be complaining about? You're filming, you're making this documentary. You were doing something that you thought, you know, it's not what you originally thought you were going to be doing, but you're doing something. And that's incredible. This is my favorite thing to do.
So I think that pure stubbornness kept this project alive, because there were a lot of us, myself included, that were like, COVID happened, we're gonna finish this no matter what happens.
I never want to see a project just die. And so getting to work with so many people who were so dedicated to really bringing this to life and, you know, picking it up from where it had really fallen on its face and then carrying it to the finish line was really incredible.
It's a complete new semester. Most of us are seniors in our last semester, working on directing projects, and we are still working on the documentary that we started a year ago, and we're proud of it. We worked our butts off for it because we are purely stubborn, very passionate individuals.
It's just the most normal feeling thing that I have at the point is just to work and to edit. And I can pretend I'm back at school in the editing labs with my friends next to me, or that we're in the media lab just talking about nothing. That was the sort of thing, is that I kind of latched on to this project as like the thing that kept me sane during quarantine.
It's not easy to balance everything that's going on right now, but I really do just want to have a finished product so that I can say that I put work into this and I did this and I finished it, so that I have that accomplishment and something to be proud of.
Even though the class has been over for a year and I'm coming to the end of my master's degree, to me, like, I'm honored and grateful to be a part of Paystox, and so it's very important to me to see this project through to completion. So the project is very close to me. I've been involved from day one, and you know, I told Dr. Luske I'm not going anywhere. You know, I'll be here through to the end, whether you like it or not. So I'm still here, but we're almost done. We're in those final stages, and we're just excited to premiere.
It's very nice. This right now is so much better than in the summer when we were all editing on Discord away from each other. It just feels more normal. Like, even though we're wearing masks and stuff, like, it's still so much better than not being able to be in the same room.
I would take this a million times over being at home and being alone.
Overall, like, even though it was a very rocky time, I feel like we took what we had and we made it work. Like, yeah, it took a long time, but in the end, like, I'm glad that I did it. I'm glad I didn't give up halfway through, because I'm excited to see the finished product at the premiere.
Knowing the premiere is 2 weeks away is exciting and nerve-wracking. It's sort of that combo of emotions. You know, we're so excited to finally be done, but nervous at the same time, because we still have some final tweaks to make, and it's sort of that stress of the last minute of, oh, how's this gonna go?
It's come a long, long way, and there's still a group of people almost a year and a half later who are still passionate about this, even though we didn't go to Paris and we had to shift gears dramatically and stay in this area. I'm just glad that there's still some passionate people who were from the beginning that are finishing this thing through.
I feel very relieved to almost be at the finish line, to almost be done with the documentary, because it has been a year, you know, so it's like finally we get to see all the work paid off, it'll be done. I love it, but I'll never have to touch it again, you know, like, it's one of those things where it's like I just want to be done with it, but like in a good way.
I'm just lucky. I feel very fortunate, and it's fun, and it's this and it's that, but I just feel very fortunate.
Though I'm excited, it's sort of that bittersweet feeling, because even though the project's been tough, we've been attached to it for over a year. So it's that excited to finally be done, but the bittersweet of knowing that soon it'll be over.
Buzz, 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 buzz.